thank you for being here today. Thank you to Enes Kanter of the Boston Celtics for joining us, and to Dr. Courtney Ratch of the Committee to Protect Journalists for all of its work on behalf of reporters and photographers everywhere in the world. Today I am introducing legislation, along with my good friend Senator Ron Wyden, that we hope will call attention to the crackdown on human rights in Turkey. There is no better time than right now to sound the alarm. Tomorrow, Turkey's President Erdogan will be at the White House at President Trump's invitation. President Trump recently made the unconscionable decision to unilaterally withdraw U.S. forces from northern Syria, paving the way for Turkish forces to commit atrocities against the Kurds. Much attention has been focused on this issue, and for good reason. But there has not been enough attention focused on the crackdown of the rights of Turkish citizens within Turkey and abroad. President Erdogan is conducting one of the biggest campaigns to restrict rights and freedoms anywhere in the world. But his actions largely have flown under the radar. So we are here to shine light on some of the worst practices. By the end of 2018, the government of Turkey had arrested or imprisoned more than 80,000 Turkish citizens, closed more than 1,500 non-governmental organizations on terrorism-related grounds, dismissed or suspended more than 130,000 civil servants from their jobs. Erdogan has forcibly closed at least 180 media outlets in the past 3 years and was detaining at least 68 journalists and media workers at the end of 2018. The Turkish government also heavily restricts and censors the internet, blocking more than 220,000 websites, including Wikipedia, and temporarily including Twitter and YouTube. It is now pressuring Netflix and other online streaming platforms to censor its content. And Erdogan has disregarded fundamental freedoms beyond Turkey's borders as well. This includes the unwarranted violence by members of his own security detail against journalists reporting on an event here in Washington in 2016. He also issued an Interpol red notice, essentially an arrest warrant for Enes Kanter, who simply has been exercising his right to free speech to advocate for basic human rights. Any attempt by foreign leaders to weaponize international law enforcement to track down and punish those who rightly call out their oppression is unacceptable, not just here, but across the entire planet. Senator Wyden and I are committed to working with Mr. Kanter so that he can travel safely outside the United States to fully do his job and exercise his right to free speech. There are few things more important than ensuring people can take part in an inclusive and fair democratic process. And President Trump's silence on this is un-American. Donald Trump should rescind the invitation for President Erdogan to visit and make clear that Turkey's record on human rights is unacceptable. And the United States Senate must unequivocally demonstrate its commitment to promoting human rights and democracy around the world. With this legislation, we hope to tell the Turkish people, as well as those suffering under authoritarian regimes everywhere around the world, that we hear you, that you have allies in the United States who believe in your fight for freedom. This bill says it is the policy of the United States to support democracy, peace, and prosperity in Turkey, and to oppose the abuse of Turkish counter-terrorism authorities that target journalism, target political opponents, and dissidents and minorities, including Kurds and others who exercise their right to freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, and association. The United States should provide assistance to civil society organizations in Turkey that work to secure the release of prisoners of conscience. We should prioritize demands to release unfairly detained journalists and media workers. The United States government should pressure the government of Turkey to halt its request that social media companies block accounts and content of journalists and media outlets, including ending its blocking of Wikipedia. We want the people of Turkey to know that we will not rest until you have the rights to which you are entitled. That is why we are here today. We are here today in order to shine a spotlight on what Erdogan is doing in Turkey, to tell President Trump that he should not have Erdogan as a guest of the American people in the White House, and that we are going to continue to work every day to shine a spotlight on what is happening. And so let me now introduce my partner in this legislative effort, the great senator, human rights crusader from the state of Oregon, Senator Ron Wyden.
Thank you, Congressman Markey, and it's great to be with friends here today. Ed and I have worked together often over the years, especially on human rights, and I just want to mention that friendship first, even if his Boston Celtics have lured Enes away from our beloved Portland Trailblazers. Now, Senator Markey is already a member in good standing of the Senate Tall Guys Caucus, and hearing no objection, I am now going to move that Enes be granted honorary membership in this organization. Now, I've had a chance to get to know Enes over the last year, starting with when he came to the Trailblazers in February. I can tell you about Enes on the court. We watched him, we were thrilled when he toughed out a shoulder injury to play a key role in the Blazers' amazing run to the Western Conference Finals. And I got a chance to get to know Enes off the court as well, as a particularly thoughtful man who was using this platform that the NBA gave him to speak out passionately and eloquently about what is happening in Turkey. And I also want to give a big thanks to the Committee to Protect Journalists, because as the son of a journalist, Peter Wyden, I've always appreciated the incredible work that y'all do to defend press freedom around the world. Here's the bottom line. We are here today to put a full court press on President Erdogan to stop the human rights abuses that the Turkish people and others are facing. I've long been of the view that the United States can't sit quietly on the sidelines when governments restrict the rights and freedoms of people. And this is especially true when the government is an important American ally, which is the case with Turkey. So that's why I spoke out on the Senate floor this year about President Erdogan's crackdown on Turkey's press and his imprisonment of journalists. It's why I called out President Erdogan's attempt to quash peaceful protest and silence dissenting views within Turkey. It's why I condemn President Erdogan's attempt to reach far beyond Turkey's borders to try to stifle critics like my friend Enes Kanter. Erdogan has threatened Enes with her arrest, making it dangerous for him to travel with his team outside the country. We saw in Oregon what that meant when people raised the question about whether he would be able to go to Toronto for a game. Erdogan certainly has also threatened Enes's family. While the media started to pay more attention to these, in my view, ominous developments by a NATO ally, as my friend Ed has just said, the Trump administration has been silent. Oregonians tell me all the time they want the United States to hold our friends and our partners and our allies to a higher standard and not look the other way when they duck on fundamental questions like human rights. And just so Erdogan and Enes know that we are pushing on all fronts, it is why, as ranking member on the Senate Finance Committee, I've also launched an investigation into Turkish government-owned Halkbank and Turkey's role in the bank's multi-billion-dollar scheme to evade U.S. sanctions on Iran. So, I'll just close by way of saying, as far as I'm concerned, you could not have better teammates than the people that we've got up here to introduce a new call out to President Erdogan to stop the attacks on Turkish democracy, to stop the violations of human rights. And we're determined as teammates to work together to hold President Erdogan finally accountable. Ed, you going to introduce our guest?
Well, again, by the way, Ron is one of the greatest basketball-playing members of Congress of all time. I just want to give him that shout-out. But we're here with a great human rights advocate and a great basketball player, Enes Kanter. Welcome,
Enes.
Enes.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. First, I want to say I'm honored and humbled to be here. I really want to say thank you to Mr. Senator Markey and Senator Wyden for their leadership and for their support. I call myself a half Organian, half a Bostonian because whenever I play for those states,
has never been more important. Turkey has consistently been one of the world's leading jailer of journalists. Last year, as you heard, at least 68 journalists were behind bars, 74 in 2017, 81 in 2016, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists research. Turkey accounts for a quarter of the journalists jailed in the world, and yet the President of the United States is meeting with President Erdogan tomorrow. As dozens of media outlets have been shuttered, as the crackdown against independent media has intensified in the wake of the coup in 2016, as websites and social media accounts are blocked, as you heard, not a single week passes without a journalist standing trial in Istanbul. The Erdogan government has used its vague anti-terrorism laws to gag critical voices through its pocket judiciary. As violations of the rights of journalists continue in Turkey, we believe that the U.S. authorities should continue putting pressure on the Erdogan government and demand the release of jailed journalists, and that this should be a top priority in any communication with journalists. And thank you to Enes and for using your platform as a sports star to bring attention to the issue of human rights abuses, including the jailing of journalists. The Committee to Protect Journalists is one of the founding members of the Center for Sport and Human Rights, where it is increasingly evident that you cannot separate sport from human rights, no matter where this is happening. So we commend the sponsors for including a section on press freedom and highlighting the plight of journalists in Turkey. And we hope that this is only one of the steps that the U.S. will take to hold its NATO ally accountable. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, questions from anyone?
Never been this bashful.
May I?
Yes, please.
Enes, would you please tell about your efforts as an athlete? I mean, everybody portrays you as a human rights and democracy advocate.
Yes.
And what do you do? If you could give us some example to just put on the ground for the people in Turkey.
I'm actually, starting a new campaign. It's called You Are My Hope. We are planning to collect 1 million signature, and then that will lead to it's going to become a conversation. I hope in the White House and Human Rights Court and the United Nations. So it's going to go globally. So that is a new project, and it calls You Are My Hope, and you can actually visit the website. It calls youaremyhope.org.
And let's go back a couple of years. Why did you decide to speak out, knowing what was at risk, not only for you but your family who still lives in Turkey?
It's definitely tough because I get this question a lot, even from my teammates, from my from some of the fans. They just telling me, excuse my language, just shut your mouth, make your money, and just live a happy life. Why are you talking about these issues? Because when you talk about these issues, you're never going to get big contracts or big endorsement deals. And that, of course, that affects me and my family. Obviously, my dad was a genetic professor, and now he got fired from his job. And my sister went to medical school for 6 years, and now she cannot find a job. But it's bigger than that. You know, it's bigger than myself. It's bigger than the NBA. It's bigger than basketball. Because what's happening in Turkey is a human tragedy. Because all those people out there are just, you know, getting tortures in jails, getting rapes in jails, and suffering. So I mean, I'm like, you know what? I have a platform, and when I tweet or when I say something about it, becomes a conversation. I know it takes a lot. I know those are even also hard conversations and hard. This is my second language, but I have to study and educate myself so I can be also all those innocent people. Like I said again, you guys know my story because I play in NBA. But right now there are 17,000 innocent women are in jail right now. There are over 1,000 babies are growing up in jails with their mother. So I'm like, what did they do? You know, ask yourself, what did they do? So for me, it's so important. I understand it affects me and my family, but I have to take this stand for all those innocent people out there.
Can you travel back to Turkey?
No. I mean, the Turkish government, so it's crazy because people ask me where am I from. I don't know what to answer. I mean, I love my country, I love my flag, but the Turkish government revoked my passport. So when they ask me if I can travel or where am I from, I don't know what to say. So not just in Turkey, they issued an arrest warrant, international arrest warrant under my name, and they put my name on red notice Interpol. So not just see, like it was so sad that last year my team went to Canada, and I couldn't travel because my job to play basketball. This is not I'm not a politician or journalist. My job to go out there, have fun with my teammates. But just because of all this stuffs are happening, I cannot even go to Canada and play the sport that I love and entertain people.
And Enes was confronted, harassed in Boston just last month when he was at his place of worship. It was clearly related to Erdogan and this hatred that is built into anyone who speaks out for human rights in Turkey. So what Senator Wyden and I are trying to do is, on the one hand, make sure that everyone in Turkey at the highest levels understands that we're here to say just don't in any way try to harm Enes, but also don't harm anyone in your own country as well.
And Senator Markey's point there is especially important, and I'll just give you a little snapshot of the kind of life that certainly the news media is discussing for our friend. And I'm on the Intelligence Committee. I'm not going to get into anything classified, but I remember at one of the key finals games in the Western Conference last year, I was going to supper with some of Enes's, friends, and we had just read an account of how, at least according to this reporter, Enes had to, in effect, have a special kind of phone by the bed in case there was an emergency. And we can get to all of you the news article. It ended up being widely circulated. So the concerns that Senator Markey is talking about, these are not abstract kinds of concerns. They are very real.
Enes, your thoughts on President Erdogan meeting with President Trump tomorrow? What's your reaction to that?
I mean, my job to just highlight, just the human rights abuses in Turkey. I'm gonna leave that to this senators.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Well done,
much.
buddy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Good job.
And thank you so much. I really. First, I want to say I'm honored and humbled to be here. I really want to say thank you to Mr. Senator Markey and Senator Wyden for their leadership and for their support. I call myself a half Oregonian, half Bostonian because whenever I play for those states or for those teams, they made me feel like at home. I've been through a lot, but for their support and for their leadership, I can call them my family. And that's why I cannot thank him enough. And one thing I want to highlight is it's people should feel very lucky and very blessed to be in this country because, it's there's democracy, there's freedom, there's, the human rights in this good country. And, sadly, none of this there is in my country. But it's just amazing to see support from not just to this gentleman, but from my teammates, from my coaches, and from all these fans. So that's why I cannot thank America enough that they made me feel at home. And I can proudly say that I'm going to become an American citizen in 2021, and I cannot wait.
Bravo.
I'm like so excited about it and so pumped about it. All I'm here today to say thank you to this gentleman and highlight all these human rights abuses in Turkey. And I really appreciate all you guys to give me this platform to talk about this issue because you guys know my story because I play in NBA, but there are thousands and thousands of stories out there that's way worse than mine. So that's why I'm trying to use my platform to be a voice of all those innocent people who don't have one, So and I hope this legislation will pass, and then we will highlight all this innocent people's struggle. And I really appreciate for giving me the opportunity to talk about these issues.
Excellent, beautiful.
Well
Thank you.
said.